We talk LA Kings coaching decisions, further examine the Kings playoff exit, and what lies ahead for the team with Karo Blikian of the Bannerman Podcast on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. Worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show wrapping up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We continue our offseason coverage of the LA Kings, and each week we like to feature a different voice and get some possible different perspectives and opinions on the LA Kings. Here to discuss several topics with us is friend of the show, Karo Blikian from the Bannerman Podcast and the website, thebannermanpod.com. You can follow the show on X and Twitter at the Bannerman Pod. Caro, how are you?
I'm doing good, Eddie. It's almost June and we're talking Kings hockey. Maybe not for the reasons we wished.
Yeah.
It's never too early, is it?
It would be nice to be talking about the Kings again at this time of the year. I'm hoping that will happen in the near future, but unfortunately not this year. And last time we had you on the show was before the playoffs, so I do want to get your thoughts on how the season came to an end and the circumstances surrounding another loss to the Oilers. But one of the things I was kind of excited about having you back on, I know you do have a little bit of a coaching background, so I'm kind of excited to get your perspective on things from that aspect. But you're also a Kings fan, and I wanted to kind of ask you, how did this end of the season kind of hit with you as far as how disappointing it was? Where did it affect you? How did it affect you?
Really sucked. I mean, it's yeah. What else am I going to say? But you compare the straight line comparison is to last season, and also even the previous two seasons when they got eliminated by Edmonton. Last season, I was in a fine place because I pretty much knew going into the series that the Kings' chances of winning that series were very low. If you go back to the first season they played the Oilers, we were just kind of happy to be there. Like, we were coming off a rebuild, so it was like fine. Even the second one, as tough a loss as it was, and in terms of comparing losses, most comparable to this one, I would say, there was still a lot of hope and understanding that, hey, it was their second crack at it. They got closer, or they looked better in general, probably against a team that was much improved. So there was positivity going in to year three. Big dip, but this one, man, I mean, probably the most disappointing of the four. I know I'm not the first person to say that, because we saw that the win was more possible than it's been in prior seasons, in my opinion. The way they played games 1 and 2, even the way they play games 3 and 4, barring stretches, I don't think there's a single Kings fan that isn't borderline heartbroken at the way the Kings lost that series, because they, from all indications, should have won it. So for the first time in a long time, I couldn't watch hockey for like a week. And that never happens. I'm usually like, okay, well, I'm a hockey fan first, a Kings fan second, no matter what. But this was one of the times where I was like, I need to step away from hockey for a little bit. And I did.
Yeah. And people who watch this show, I've shared a little bit about some of the stuff going on with my family. So there's some big things going on that are way outside of hockey that I totally get what's important and what isn't. That having been said, we still have our passions. We still have the things we're interested in and we care about, even if we know it's not life or death. And I really had to step away too. I had to, I was depressed. I was really depressed about this. And I said, I was around when the Marty McSorley stick thing happened. Although I was a really new fan, I didn't really grasp it all. And I wasn't that, as invested as I am now. I thought that Game 4 loss was probably the most disappointing loss I've ever experienced as a Kings fan in the playoffs. But I wanted to get that. We talked about the coaching aspect, and I know Jim Hiller's taken a lot of heat, perhaps deservedly so. The third periods in games 3 and 4. I don't know if you're now watching the playoffs, I assume, after taking a break, but I was watching game 4 of the Stars Oilers, and Edmonton has a 2-1 lead in the third period, and they weren't backing off. They even talked about it in the broadcast about how, wow, look at Edmonton still going, they're not doing anything stupid. They're not being reckless, but they're not just sitting back. And we saw that from the Kings, and there are different opinions on how that happened, why it happened, how it should have been addressed, I guess. So I just wanted to ask you again, coming from a coaching background, do you believe that was some sort of a strategy on the Kings' part, or do you believe the players when they said things to the effect of, well, it's just human nature to want to protect a lead?
Hard to pinpoint it, but I will say this. Even if it wasn't a strategy directly from the coaching staff, the way they deployed their players almost forces the Kings to play that way. Because anyone who's played sports, when you're tired, let's stick to hockey. Anyone who's played hockey, when you're tired, what you're trying to do is just 30-second, get in there 30 seconds, give it your all, get the red line, dump it in, and change. And the way the Kings, when they change, they immediately go to their neutral zone forecheck. So if they're just doing that, essentially weathering the storm, chipping it down and changing, yeah, you're going to be sitting back because you don't have the energy to counter, number one. In those 30-second bursts, you're depleting yourself, and now all you want to do is chip, get it out, change, and the next line out is just going to go into the neutral zone 1-2-2. So it always feels like they're coming. Like that's so even if, which I'm not 100% sure that's the truth, but even if there was no directive from Jim Hiller that we need to sit back here and just, take away zone entries, I think the way they were deployed, they had to play that way, as tired as they were. So in a roundabout way, it's still on the coaching staff at the end of the day. Like it absolutely is. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned these other series, like teams are rolling 4 lines and they have legs at the end of the game. And the Oilers, the reason they keep pressing, or one of the reasons, is because they've trusted their depth. Knobloch, who I've been critical of in the past, one thing he does really well is pinpoint players that he needs to insert into the lineup at the right time and give them minutes. Kasperi Kapanen was a healthy scratch the entire Kings series. Against Vegas, he gets put in, he gets minutes. It's not like he was put in and got 4 minutes. He gets minutes, he gets an overtime winner. So at the end of the day, no matter where you want to go with theories on whose fault it was, I think it comes down to the way they were deployed. And game 5 especially, they had nothing left. You could see it, everyone could see it, and that's essentially where they lose the series.
So if the coach doesn't trust some of the players, is that on the coach for not trying to give them the opportunity to, show him or not that they can be trusted? Or do you think that they did that and there were some players who didn't show that they could be trusted? And how much of that is on, the general manager, who's now not there anymore, to get him players that he could have trusted? Did you see this coming, I guess, is also part of the question.
I'm going to go back to the coach here, because he had, in my opinion, and again, this is from a very far away look, but in my opinion, he had plenty of sample size to see whether or not he could trust Jordan Spence or not. And he trusted him in the regular season. Those are important games down the stretch. Those were important games. He was playing, yes, in the third period at times. He went to his older or more experienced forward defenseman towards the end of the season as well, yes, but he didn't healthy scratch Jordan Spence. He didn't give him 4 minutes a night. He was still getting decent minutes. So if it's okay when you're trying to secure a playoff spot and securing home ice, why isn't it okay in a series where you, by the way, you're up 2-0? It's not like this is game 7 and you're like, we gotta roll the big 4. So I gotta, it's gotta be on Jim Hiller at the end of the day. I think for all everything we've read, everything we've talked about, Rob Blake did a good job. He gave him a team that is arguably the best Kings team during Rob Blake's tenure. Statistics bear it out as well. So, yeah, I just got to go back to the coach. And in your last question, when you said see this coming, just to clarify, what were you referring to?
Exactly what you were talking about, basically.
Okay.
The way that he used his bench during the regular season. What changed? What changed?
Yeah.
I understand the games are more important, but either you trust your players or you don't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Did not see it coming because they did not. I don't remember them sitting back to this extent during the regular season. In fact, they were one of the top third period teams in the NHL in goal differential, which suggests they're not sitting back in the third period, regardless of the score. So it's blindsiding. And a lot of people would ask me, is this Kings team different? Or I went at some people who would claim they're the same team. I would say no, because look at this sample size. Look at their third period differential. They are countering quite a bit. They're even late in games. And of course, the playoffs started, and everyone's like, "See, told." I'm like, dude, they were not the same team for 82 games. You can't tell me I was wrong, because I'm using the evidence provided to me for a very large sample size. It turns out I was wrong, I guess, but it all leads to the frustration of it all for me with this team.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what also made Game 4 tougher than Game 3 is because they just did it, and it didn't work in Game 3, and they came back and it happened again. And you're like, how could it happen again? You just had an example of that is not what you need to do. And then you come back and you do it again. That's probably what drove me crazy the most. I got one more Jim Hiller question for you in a minute, but we also got to talk about the Kings now, bringing in a new general manager. Want to get your thoughts on that for sure. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the action with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moment, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? How could a $200 bonus bet add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We continue with Karo Blikian, one of the hosts of the Bannerman Podcast. I did want to ask you, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the new general manager of the LA Kings, Hall of Famer Ken Holland, multiple cup winner in Detroit years ago, is now the man in charge. And I know when you're kind of coming into a new situation, maybe the first thing you're not looking to do is to make a change. But do you believe that the LA Kings would have been better off looking for a more experienced playoff caliber head coach to take over going forward?
I'm leaning yes. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens anyway. And I'm not talking about this summer. I'm talking about during the regular season. I would not be surprised if the Kings go elsewhere, not at the first sign of trouble, but I mean, at one of the valleys of the season. I wouldn't be surprised, because one thing we've seen with most GMs is eventually they're going to get their guy in there. And for Ken Holland, it seems like he has a short-term contract, and he has a handful of years, maybe 2 or 3, to get this team wherever he perceives they should be. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Miller's on a very short leash. So yes, I think it all kind of, if you're going to tweak and get this team over the hump and all this stuff, I think the coach is a part of that. That being said, I'm not upset that Jim Miller is back. I understand why he's back. And I do believe that he can learn from what happened. But at the same time, I think like Ken Holland might be waiting for the first chance. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure he has a guy in mind right now where he's like, I wish this guy was coaching this team. That's just, I think that's just the way GMs think. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's the NHL as well. I mean, Coaches come and go very quickly. About Ken Holland, certainly the resume speaks for itself. Hall of Famer. It is not an organization promotion of somebody like they were talking about maybe Nelson Emerson, the assistant GM, or Mark Bergevin, the special advisor. So they did go outside the organization. But what are your thoughts on Ken Holland?
I think it's fine. I mean, I'm not thrilled, but I'm not upset. I think from everything we heard from Luc Robitaille in his initial presser, when the hire was made, you kind of go like, oh, of course. Like, yeah, the connection there. And after the presser where he says, like, next level, we got to, he talked a lot about winning the Stanley Cup. He talked a lot about deep playoff runs. And while in that 1 week or whatever it was where we were kind of speculating who it could be, although I never thought of Ken Holland because I thought he was retired, quite frankly. It seemed like he was. But after the fact, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that, you bring in a guy who has a short window, who, like you said, has the resume, and with the one kind of directive of take us far in the playoffs, it makes sense. So I'm optimistic. What am I going to do here? Like, I think there's a lot of people who want that progressive thinking kind of younger GM. And I think that's coming, by the way. That's coming. I think that's coming in year 3, 4, or 3 years from now, 4 years from now. I think that's going to happen. But I think for this particular stretch of time where this is the team, like they've built this team, whether you agree with the build or not. I know a lot of people don't, and that's fair. But whether you agree or not, this is the build, and this is the build they're going to try to push up this hill. And in 3 years, maybe you reevaluate, you get a younger GM, you start tearing down a little bit. That I think is possible. But I think a younger, progressive thinking GM is coming, and it's not going to be too long.
One of the first orders of business for Ken Holland is to make a decision on Vladislav Gavrikov, whether to bring him back or not. Your thoughts on that decision?
The number obviously is going to be very important. I think they're going to try to bring him back because if you don't, I think it opens up several issues if you don't. I think you pretty much have to rebuild your entire second pair, which is I know it's only 2 players, but I don't think at that point you're going to get a partner for Jordan Spence. I think your mind frame probably changes to like maybe we move Spence and kind of make a new second pair that would work better with our decor. I think it probably creates some issues if you don't sign him, but at the same time, I don't think it's wise to give him a full boat at like $8.5 million. I think that's asking for trouble a little bit. So my initial gut feeling is try to sign him, but if it gets crazy, and it might, by the way, get crazy for him, I think you're gonna have to walk away. But you got to have a plan B there, because you take him out of that decor, man. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, like what do we do on the second pair? I don't think anyone is thrilled about Joel Edmondson possibly playing second pair minutes, even though he did all year, by the way. But I think going back to what you said, if the coach is going to need guys he trusts, you can't have a pairing or even 2 defensemen in the decor that he can't trust, because you're going to end up having the same issues. So we'll see. I think all those things combined, I would probably do my best to sign him, but there's got to be a cap to what you're willing to pay him.
I know you recently wrote an article about this over at the BannermanPod.com about the good and the bad that could potentially come with signing Mitch Marner. Of course, he has to want to come here as well. We don't know if that's even
right.
Part of the equation, but just from the Kings standpoint, I think I'm in love with the idea of getting a player like a Mitch Marner. In other words, I would love to see the Kings. I've talked about this before, and for what it's worth, I go around, I read different articles, see what people are saying, possible landing spots for this player. They never mention the Kings. So I want the Kings to be mentioned in those articles. I want people to think of them as a destination, because it doesn't seem like they are. So I'm in love with the idea of going after Mitch Marner. I don't know that I'm particularly in love with him individually, although I think he's talented and I think any player that is of his talent could help. But I think I'm more in love with the idea of going after them than maybe going after him. What are some of the things you touched on in that article that you wrote about Mitch Marner?
Yeah, I mean, right out of the gate, right-handed shot, right? Like a power play machine, a guy who's a top 10 player, arguably, in the league. That kind of production, and I know a lot of people will say, well, on the Kings, he's going to score 70 points. I don't think so. But at the same time, that kind of production, you just can't find it. And to go to your original point, which is a great point, if he wants to come here, if on July 1st, he says, I want to come to Los Angeles, you would have to be a fool not to do everything you can to make that happen. Because like you said, who's the biggest free agent signing in Kings history, Eddie? I don't know. Like it might be Ilya Kovalchuk coming out of the KHL.
That's honestly
right?
the first name that came to mind, and that's kind of sad.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have a track record of it just hasn't happened. And if you got a player of this caliber on the phone with you saying, I want to come there, I think you got it. I mean, you'll be foolish to pass on it. I know, and I wrote about it too. I know your concerns, and they're valid. But at the same time, I think the problem with Toronto, I think, is there's too many Mitch Marners there, or at least players like him, players with his mindset, the way they're wired. They're very similar, like Matthews, Tavares, Nylander. They're all kind of like, I don't want to say soft because it's not detrimental. They don't have that killer instinct. I think one Mitch Marner in your formula is perfectly fine. I think when you get multiple those type of players, I think that's where the issues start. That's where the issues start from Toronto. By the way, he's a point of game player in the playoffs. You could do worse than Mitch Marner. And I think if you surround him with, a Kempe who's a killer in the playoffs, if you surround him with Kopitar who has the experience, Kevin Fiala had a tremendous series. Now, is he growing into a playoff type performer? If you put him in a different situation, I think you could have different results. And I say that by saying, like, even if the results aren't that different, point a game in the playoffs, that's not so bad. Like you could do a lot worse than that. But I think he has the capability to elevate. And I think, if you're going to sign Marner, you probably don't have Kuzmenko anymore. So he fills that power play role that the Kings desperately need to fill if Andrei Kuzmenko is not coming back. So I'm in on it. That being said, I hope they have a plan B because 10 teams are going to want this guy.
We're going to talk a little bit about the future stars, hopefully, of the LA Kings. We'll touch on that next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether you're snacking at your desk or on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids, whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids. Wonderful Pistachios is a snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. We're wrapping it up with Karo Blikian of the Bannerman Podcast and the BannermanPod.com. You can also follow him on X and Twitter at the Bannerman Pod. Did want to ask you quickly about the old guard, I guess, for the Kings. With all due respect to Trevor Lewis, Andre Kopitar and Drew Doughty are obviously coming to the end of their careers with the Kings, at least. Kopitar's got 1 more year. Drew's got 2 more. Do you think this is the last season for Andre Kopitar?
I'm leaning yes, but I mean, it's funny. When he signed this contract, this 2-year contract, he made it sound like that was it. Like, I'm going to play these 2 years and I'm gone. But then in the last player exit interviews, he was more like, we'll see what happens there. And, maybe. And I was like, oh, okay, because you were really sure last time that after 2 years, you're probably gone. Listen, if I would prefer he stays personally. Like, if you might remember this. Joe Thornton used to sign these 1-year deals until he was age 40 or something, and like every year he would just re-up. I wouldn't mind a situation like that for Kopitar because, you mentioned the future. Who's your second line center if he's gone? Like, that's a big hole to fill. Sure, you can, get someone in a trade or free agency, but if you are going big game hunting for Mitch Marner and Adrian Kempe is due for a substantial raise, like who are you really going to get in the 2C position at a good price? And I think as Kopitar, as his contract expires, and if he does want to return 1 year at a time, I think you might be able to get him for a nice bargain. You could do, like I said, you could do a lot worse than him. And I would prefer he returns till the wheels fall off, so to speak. And I think with Ken Holland coming in and there's this push for, we're going for it, he might be more willing to stay a year or two.
Speaking of the wheels falling off, are they going to keep running Drew Doughty out there until the wheels fall off? Are we going to see him get some reduced minutes next season, or are they going to just keep throwing him out there as much as they do?
I think he's still going to be in the 20 range. I think this is a player choice. And I know that shouldn't be the case. And I know as a coach, you should kind of step in and save a player from himself at times, but I don't think he wants to play less minutes. I think he wants to play.
I guarantee he doesn't want to play less than minutes.
And I think he has enough cachet and respect in that locker room where the coach is kind of going to defer to him and be like, okay. I mean, he's going to have to be really bad for him to peel back to like 17, 18 minutes. I think he's going to be good. I think he had a rough-ish season, but I mean, we all know the situation coming back from an ankle, broken ankle. He didn't have the mobility he wanted. I think he's earned another opportunity at those minutes, at least, to see what he can do on a good leg.
Got to ask about Quentin Byfield. Obviously, I think we're all very excited about what we saw towards the end of the season. Is it time, right? I know I've preached, patience with him, and I've never really wavered in my confidence that he could eventually become a very good player for the Kings. I think I'm ready to say it's next year is the time, right? Are you ready to say next year is the time?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about is he the first line center, that conversation's always going on. I think there were nights in the playoffs he was the leading forward in ice time. So that's all that matters. You want to talk about alignment, I don't think that really matters. I mean, look at his minutes played, look at his time on ice. I think he is playing on the way the Kings are structured, first line minutes. I suspect that will not change. I suspect he will have his best season next season, especially with the chemistry he found with Kevin Fiala and whoever is going to be on their right side. Obviously, right now it's LaFerriere, but whatever the case may be, yeah, I think yes. I think we've talked about it. We know it. Like, it's his time, and I suspect he's going to have a true. I know we've been saying, a breakout season. I think this has to be his true breakout season.
And along those same lines, Brandt Clarke, I know that they wanted him to become a more defensive, responsible NHL level player, kind of maybe before they let him loose a little bit. You think we're going to see him be allowed to be more creative and be a little bit more impactful come next season?
I think so. I think he adapted his game to whatever the coaching staff wanted, and I think it was very evident down the stretch. In the playoffs, I thought he was good. I don't think he was a net negative. I think he was a net positive. He scores 2 goals for a player his age in a 6-game series, a defenseman. That's significant, like 2 goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And he did it on plays where he did what Brandt Clarke does. He jumps up on the play. The first one was a power play goal off a pass from Foegele, but he's going right to the net. The second one, he's joining the attack. He's the late guy. Deneau finds him. Perfect shot. Like, I think he's the kind of player that no matter how many times you try to change him, his core, what he is at his core, is not going to change. So that's good news for us as fans, because that's what we want to see. But I think you got to credit him for really buying into the Kings system, but not to the point where he's going to change his DNA as a player. And I think that's the perfect sweet spot. And just like Byfield, I think he's gonna pop off this season. I really believe that.
I certainly hope that is the case. I'm hopeful. Karo, always great to have you on the show. I wanted to give you an opportunity to let the people know. I know you're starting to write some more articles that you're excited about. You got the podcast as well, so feel free to let our listeners and our viewers know anything about the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eddie. So last time I was on, I was with the Hockey News. I had a great time there. I chose to leave and kind of expand on the Bannerman Podcast. So like Eddie said, we have a website, thebannermanpod.com. We now have a podcast and we're writing articles. So that's the goal, to expand on that. And for anyone who's willing to take the time to either listen to us or read us, we greatly appreciate it.
And Karo, we greatly appreciate your time. Always good to chat with you. And looking forward to getting another conversation with you, I'm sure, before next season starts as well.
My pleasure, my brother. See you next time.
All right. Take care, Karo. Appreciate it. All right, you guys, for you everydayers, those of you listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on our next show, it is another Kings fan feedback show. Anything on your mind you want to get off your chest, you want to share, any questions you want to ask, I'll do my best to answer them. The email address, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And if you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate the comments in the comment section as well. We'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, or even on TikTok, allegedly, at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go. Thank you, Karo.
Thanks, man. Did you see that Marchessault is available?
No.
Yeah. This is like yesterday.
Did you repost that article, by the way? Did you repost that?